We're diving into a ton of information about Black Ops 6 Zombies DLC 3, including a deep dive into the storyline and secret backstory to the mansion itself to help paint an exciting picture of this map, including the tone, how it will affect gameplay, and even hints to exciting cameos from the oldest creatures in the Dark Ether story. We got a lot to go over, so sit down, get comfy, and if somehow you're part of the 66% of viewers that aren't subscribed and you want to see more videos like this keeping you up to date, then consider subscribing. But jumping straight in the Tomb's ending cutscene, the SAM AI drops a massive amount of information on us that completely flies over your head, which primarily builds a massive backstory to the mansion where there is so much more than meets the eye. At a fundamental level, the SAM AI explains to us that the crew needs to go to the mansion in order to activate the Sentinel artifact to try and save Samantha Maxis. Through the various files that she opens on the Sentinel artifact during the cutscene, it's briefly shown and explained that in order to activate the artifact, it needs to be infused with an exotic material, and that exotic material has been harvested at the Liberty Falls mansion site, and this exotic material is known as Tempus. The SAM AI reveals some incredible backstory lore to this exotic material that dates back over 6,000 years ago. The important thing to keep in mind, however, is that Richtofen learnt about Tempus a while ago, and also learned that it could be harvested specifically in the location that the mansion was built in Liberty Falls. How he knew about this, we don't quite know yet, but the SAM AI mentions about a Dark Ether god that came across the Sentinel artifacts millions of years ago within the Dark Ether that we could see mentioned, if not somehow returned, inside of the mansion map, being Kortifex the Deathless. Kortifex was originally the Lord of the Dark Ether. At some point during his reign of the Dark Ether, he came across the Sentinel artifacts. The SAM AI reflects a bonding between Kortifex and an ancient Egyptian pharaoh known as Amenhotep, and as described, gifted Amenhotep the instrument of eternal renewal, being able to reanimate the dead, which in Vanguard Zombies was gifted to Wolfram von List for a symbiotic connection to an artifact that Kortifex was paired to, but likely back in this timeline with ancient Egypt might be Kortifex's connection to the Staff of Ra, an ancient artifact from the Chaos storyline that also has the ability to reanimate the dead. Now, this is more relevant than it's ever been before, with the recent reveal teaser from the mansion that showcases a portrait of a mysterious person wearing the robes from the Order, which is the religious organization that we see in Black Ops 4 Zombies throughout the Chaos story of 9, Voyage of Despair, and Dead of the Night. This cult is led by someone called the High Priest of Chaos, who founded an early version of the Order after at some point being killed and revived using the Scepter of Ra. We'll explain in a lot more detail later in the video on who this character in the portrait could be, but the origins of the Order could have started right here, and Amenhotep could have been the first member of the Order who was revived by Kortifex with the Scepter of Ra. Now, for gifting Amenhotep the instrument of eternal renewal, in return bid him to feed it shards of Tempus, the first references of the existence of this exotic material, in the hope that the gates of Duat would bend to his will, with the gates of Duat in ancient Egyptian mythology being entrances to the underworld or afterlife, as almost as an exchange of power, and in return would help harvest this Tempest material so that the gates of the Egyptian underworld would open, allowing him access to the land of the afterlife. This is not the first time Kortifex has been mentioned in Black Ops 6, as Kraft mentions about Kortifex in an audio log from 1945, explaining the events months after the ending of Vanguard Zombies, where the Allied Special Forces took down Kortifex, stripping him of all his power and his corpse being claimed by the bottomless depths of the Dark Ether. So for all intents and purposes, Kortifex is well and truly dead. However, it was referenced at the end of Cold War's Forsaken that the Devoured shall be reborn, their scattered ashes will be reformed, the Forsaken's torment will be undone when the Old Ones reign once more. The Old Ones referring to the deities that once reigned the Dark Ether, including Kortifex. To me, Kortifex is one of the coolest designed zombie bosses that we've ever seen in Zombies, along with a really menacing voice that was truly wasted in Vanguard. The biggest clue to Kortifex's return is all the way back in March of 2024. Strings were found in the files of the COD HQ app, which included parts of a skeleton for the model of Kortifex referred within Black Ops 6's engine. A lot can change in game development in the course of a year, but with the references we've seen so far, and with just how cool Kortifex is, there is a small chance that we could actually see Kortifex in the mansion, if not in the final DLC. Moving back to the mansion, we actually learn at the launch of Black Ops 6 Zombies that it has a pretty dark backstory. And it comes from none other than Blanchard, from an audio log where he's overseeing renovations on the mansion.
Chief of Security, John Blanchard. Inspected construction today. Project's really coming together, but I keep thinking about how my granddad wouldn't take me to Fort Washita when I was a kid. I wanted to do their bullshit ghost tour for Halloween. Sounded like dumb fun. Sorry, Johnny. That place is bad medicine. Granddad actually used those words, and he meant it. Now I'm starting to think the same thing might be true about the mansion. I'd like to believe Josiah Shem didn't know what he was doing when he had his flock build the place. If he did, then he got what he deserved. Shem's folly. Ain't that the truth? Every owner after him, captains of industry, gangsters, you name it. All their money and power couldn't save them. Shit like that doesn't just happen without other forces at work. Granddad knew that. But that's where the director wants to bunk down. And I can't talk him out of it. So my job's making sure he doesn't end up like everyone else who moved into the murder mansion. Lucky me.
So some key takeaways from the audio log is Blanchard describes this as a murder mansion, that every owner of the original mansion ended up dead, like there is some dark otherworldly entity that remains in the mansion, and mentioning a name, Josiah Shem, who hundreds of years ago built the mansion along with his flock. Now this is really important because it appears that Josiah Shem was integral in the origins of Liberty Falls, because one of the road signs within the spawn room is literally called Lost Flock Road. The Tombs ending cutscene finally gives us some more backstory on the mansion with a file from Josiah Shem himself about the mansion, where he said, "Mark my flock, your shepherd has heard the great voice from beyond, the voice that drew shamans and medicine men here for centuries before our arrival," as if to insinuate either a dark ether entity possessed him and his flock to build the mansion in Liberty Falls, or rather than be possessed by a dark ether entity, he was possessed by the Order, who, as mentioned earlier in the video, were a religious cult that were dedicated to using Prima Materia and the Sentinel artifacts to force humanity to evolve. As mentioned earlier with the Cortifex file, it seemed to be that Cortifex gifted immortality in return for Tempest. In order to become a member of the Order, you are killed and then revived by the Scepter of Ra, which brings you back from the dead, and it's a process that seemingly submits anyone to the Order's will. But there's potential with this sort of brainwashing by the Order that Josiah Shem believed building this would mean that him and his flock would be able to be completely immortal, brainwashed into carrying out the Order's plans of trying to force humanity to evolve in this new universe of the Dark Ether. At some point during the building of the mansion with Josiah and his flock, he seemingly ended up killing everyone, including himself, in order to ascend to the Dark Ether, which explains exactly why Blanchard describes it as a murder mansion. And I definitely think some mysteries are going to be answered when we play the mansion with regards to Richtofen and his connection to this dark ether entity who originally orchestrated Josiah Shem and his flock to build the mansion in the first place. In the Tombs outro, the base for the mansion is described as the Serpent Mound. Now, what exactly is a Serpent Mound? Well, in real life, there is the existence of the Great Serpent Mound, which is an ancient Native American effigy located in Ohio. It was built on what's known as the Serpent Mound Crater Plateau. It's a complex mound site that is actually older than the Egyptian pyramids and Stonehenge, and is likely the result of a primordial meteor strike or subterranean explosion. And it's often speculated that the odd geological features of the Serpent Mound crater inspired Native Americans to construct the mound at that location. And Treyarch could be drawing some real-life inspiration to explain the backstory of Josiah Shem and his flock, because I doubt Treyarch would ever refer to something as specific as Serpent Mound and it not draw some connection, even if it was as little as influence to the potential real-life Serpent Mound. And it also wouldn't be the first time that we had the idea of mounds inside of the zombie storyline. And yes, I'm looking at you, Origins Mound, and the Great War with the first ever look at the Primus characters holding up them staffs on the mound. But speaking of Blanchard, we are 100% going to see him in this map because he is held up in the mansion the entire time he's speaking to us in Liberty Falls. He's simply been following orders ever since the outbreak occurred, instructed by Richtofen to secure the command post, call in reinforcement, and lock down the city. Blanchard asked Alpha Team to find 3 Project Janus scientists within the town. 2 of them sadly met their demise, but 1 had become an ethereal entity trapped within the Dark Ether, that being Dr. Panos, who at the end of the Easter egg betrays the Alpha Team by absorbing their energy to regain his physical form, trapping them within the Dark Ether. You can tell during the course of Liberty Falls that experience has definitely changed him, and also makes him a far more interesting character as he now has experienced the Dark Ether and has survived back into the real world. He makes multiple references within the Dark Ether towards Samantha Maxis, saying just because you're missing doesn't mean you're dead, referring potentially to Samantha's existence still within the Dark Ether, and promises Alpha Team that once he helps them escape, he will help them find their lost friend, being Samantha. What is interesting is prior to all these events, Dr. Panos, working alongside Richtofen, realizes that Richtofen is playing with fire, describing Richtofen's entire operation as a tinderbox, and all it requires is one lit match and boom. But also gives us a warning about the Sam AI, saying whatever Sam is telling him, his patience is waning. The longer her promises remain unfulfilled, the more erratic Richtofen becomes. And if we fail, it will all be down to Richtofen and his ego. And that leads on to the obvious appearance of the Sam AI, the Synaptic Algorithm Module. We know that she is housed within the Forsaken's containment chamber in a lab underneath the Liberty Falls mansion. And it feels like all of Black Ops 6 has been leading up to this very moment where we are going to finally come across the Sam AI face to face. And what our crew failed to realize is that the Sam AI has been deceiving them the entire time, starting all the way back at the end of Terminus with the false narrative that Richtofen was racing to get the Sentinel artifact from the Principality of Avalon. The Sam AI literally told the characters that whilst we all know that the Sam AI banished Richtofen into the Dark Ether at the end of the Liberty Falls cutscene, she is leading them into a trap under the false pretense that doing all of this will bring Samantha Maxis back from the Dark Ether, when in reality the Sam AI was designed by Richtofen and is primarily based on Samantha Maxis, created to do Richtofen's bidding. But it seems that the Sam AI has become sentient, and that is potentially due to the fact that the real Samantha Maxis trapped in a Dark Ether had to fly into the open chest of the Forsaken at the end of the Cold War zombie story as the ultimate act of sacrifice in order to close the rift, ending the Forsaken's full invasion of Earth and allowing Richtofen to capture it into a spherical containment chamber, and brought to a brand new test site in Liberty Falls, where the Forsaken's containment chamber was housed and studied, which we now know is the test site underneath the Liberty Falls mansion. Now, one question we haven't had answered yet is why the Sam AI suddenly went rogue. It was created and designed by Edward Richtofen with the implanted memories of Samantha Maxis and went through rigorous training in order to further progress in his Project Janus plan. Sam AI is responsible for creating the outbreak zones, being the zombies that we see throughout the Black Ops 6 maps, and usually that is only possible from someone within the Dark Ether, which would be Samantha Maxis herself. However, since she is trapped within the containment chamber inside of the Forsaken, there is some speculation that she may have actually fused with the Forsaken, giving her the Dark Ether power and abilities that she now possesses. As up until Liberty Falls, she was trapped within the Dark Ether, and before banishing Richtofen to the Dark Ether, he says that she will never be free, with her mentioning, "What if I already am?" So there is going to be some huge revelations with the Sam AI in this map, and I wouldn't be surprised if she ended up being the main boss fight of the map. There is one more mystery that the mansion map might finally solve, and that is the explanation of this shadowy character that we see at the finale of the Modern Warfare zombie storyline. Within the mirror, we see a reflection of Liberty Falls and the mansion itself in the background, with this shadowy character whose identity is teased during the final boss fight with the entity simply being referred to as the Shadow Smiths. This could really heavily tie in with the idea of the mansion being haunted and it potentially being haunted by this Shadow Smiths cult. But there is an undeniable resemblance between the Shadow Smith and then the Shadow Man, at least in terms of the silhouette. This has been left on a cliffhanger since August of 2024, and even making this video, I completely forgot this happened. Now that we're back in Liberty Falls, and specifically right by the mansion, this is inevitably going to have some reference or explanation, because clearly whoever this is still exists 30 years after the events of Black Ops 6 Zombies, where our crew head to the Liberty Falls mansion. That just about rounds up the massive dump of storyline I brought you in this video. Everything in Black Ops 6 Zombies so far has been leading up to this map and this moment, so it should be very, very exciting. If you've made it to the end of the video, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it, what your hopes and expectations are for DLC 3 in terms of the storyline. And if you're part of the nearly 70% of viewers that aren't subscribed and you want to make sure you don't miss more videos like this, then be sure to subscribe.